Tuesday, April 23rd Planning Board meeting. We are being recorded thanks to WinCam. If you do not wish to be recorded, you can turn your camera off. We will open with a roll call vote. Nick?
Present.
Brian?
Present.
Diab?
Am I not being coming across?
There you are. Now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I think I've got the wrong mic.
It's okay. Can you just repeat if you...
Present.
Great, thank you. And John?
Present.
And I am Carrie Layton. I'm president as well. And for the first hour, we're going to turn it over to town planner Taylor Herman to talk about the Springtown meeting.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, everyone else. Thank you for everyone for joining. If I can ask someone from the planning board to please keep a lookout on the waiting room. I'm not going to be doing that. So thank you for everyone for joining tonight. We're giving everyone in the community the opportunity to take a look at what we'll be bringing to next Monday, Springtown meeting, everyone's favorite time of the year. And we will, as you know, the planning board has been working on 3A, and that's what we intend to be talking about today. Now, we've set this up to be primarily a informational session. We want to be able to share as much information as possible. We want to do it in about 10 to 15 minutes. We want to make the presentation as quick and seamless as we possibly can make it, and then open up for discussion. Once discussion starts, anyone can ask a question. I'll go through the process of raising hands and all of that. So without further ado, we'll jump right into the presentation. So what is MBTA 3A? It's something that has been in the works for a while. It's not something that just affects the Winchester community. It affects many communities across the state. In January of 21, it was passed on the state level, and all MBTA communities are required to have a zoning district of a reasonable size, which multifamily housing, which is classified as 3 or more units, be permitted as of right. And something that is important to note, and we'll dive a little bit into it in a slide or two, is that this is a law. This is mandatory compliance. We share this responsibility with 170 some communities. Winchester is considered a commuter rail community. There are 4 separate types of communities. There's rapid transit, so that's T, or the T, red line, orange line. If it goes through those communities, that's a rapid transit community. Commuter rail community, that's communities which have commuter rail stops. Adjacent community, so a community adjacent to one of those, and then an adjacent small community, which is adjacent to adjacent. So that all comes to about 170 some communities, which are all required to comply with this law. As I mentioned, compliance is necessary, and it is also necessary to comply at Springtown meeting. Now, we are, the state has set a deadline for us to comply by the end of 24, so December 24. However, the reason we're bringing this to everyone now at Springtown meeting is because we want to have plenty of runway after Springtown meeting to ensure compliance without without going over. If we wait until the fall, and whether it doesn't pass at town meeting, or the state denies our project or our compliance, then we will be out of compliance, and that's something that we want to make sure that we're not. So it's not only is compliance necessary, but we really believe that compliance at Springtown meeting is necessary. So what have we been doing for the last few years? So as I mentioned, this all started in 21, but in 2022 is when the MBTA guidelines, the MBTA 3A, MBTA Communities Act guidelines were issued. That's when most communities saw it for the first time. And our first responsibility at that point was to submit an action plan, which was essentially telling the state, this is how we think we're going to do it. This was just a written document, a few paragraphs. This was done by some members of the existing planning board and my predecessor, Brian Zakelli. In 2023, that's when the work really started from the town level. We worked on many different compliance models. We formed a townwide advisory group, or an advisory group from members townwide, called the ZRAC, the Zoning Review Advisory Committee. And that I've thanked that committee before, and I want to continue to thank that committee. We would not be here without your work. You put in a tremendous amount of work during holidays on a weekly basis, and you were volunteers, and we really appreciate all of that work. We held several public meetings, and we began to draft our bylaws. One additional thing that I would like to mention here is that we also started working with a consultant, Emily Innes, who played a really crucial part in helping us understand what we needed to do in order to comply. And I should mention, before Emily, we did also work with another consultant, J.M. Goldson, who helped us with those initial steps with the action plan. Moving to 2024, in the last few months, we completed an economic feasibility analysis, which helps us determine the appropriate amount of affordable housing that we would be able to implement into our zone, or our zoning overlay. We held several more public sessions, and we submitted our bylaw to the town with review from many boards, many community committees, and from town council. So getting a little bit into what we need to accomplish. The state has set specific numbers that we need to achieve. The first is our density number. We need to average across all sub-districts 15 dwelling units per acre. We need a minimum of 37 total acres. Within that acreage, we need to zone for a minimum of 1,220 units. And 50% of those units need to be within a half-mile radius of Winchester of transit, which we are using Winchester Center, and half of the land area has to be within that radius as well. So to clarify this a little bit, is we have to zone for this. We're not necessarily, we aren't responsible for building it. We just have to zone for it. We have to take our train station. We do have 2 train stations, but we are just using Winchester Center. We have to draw a half-mile radius outside of that. And then we have to meet half of our criteria there. And then outward of that half-mile radius, we have to meet the other half of our criteria. So in our breakdown of our compliance model, we've created 4 different sub-districts. We're referring to this whole district as the MOD, the MBTA overlay district. And when you see Mod 1, Mod 2, Mod 3, Mod 4, those are sub-districts within our overlay district. Each one has their own set of rules that conform with what is existing there today. We didn't want to stray away too far from anything that you see today. So we broke it down into 4 different distinct subdivisions or sub-districts that represent those areas as they are today. And the most important thing to note is that the breakdown that we've reached is in compliance with the state mandate. And one thing that you'll see here is that there are currently there's up to 170 units already built within this mod. That's a really important number to know, because we're required to zone for 1,220 units. However, the existing units that are already in the mod do count to that number. So it's important to know what is already there versus what can be there in the future. And for anyone who has their hand raised, I will get to everyone's question once the presentation is done. As I mentioned before, the purpose of this law is to create multifamily housing, 3 units or more. In our existing bylaws, we section off multifamily housing as 4 different things, which we say as apartment house, dwelling multifamily, garden apartment house, and townhouse. All 4 of these will be allowed by right, but we aren't creating any new types of uses. We're using existing uses that are in our bylaws, and we're allowing those by right in all districts, sub-districts. We see the MBTA 3A as an opportunity to close the gap on what's referred to as the missing middle, which is multifamily housing that is less expensive than single family housing, but typically more expensive than deeply affordable or even affordable housing. Winchester is predominantly detached single family housing at about 70%. And we know, based off of not just data that we've captured through our housing production plan, but data that we've captured on a regional level, that there's an opportunity, a significant opportunity, to create more a different type of housing type than what we're used to, which allows for people to downsize and move into a home, which allows them to age in place, maybe allows younger people to move in as well, creating new housing opportunities for people who either find Winchester inaccessible or want to remain in the community at a more without having to take care of a lawn anymore. As we mentioned before, one of the requirements that we have for to meet is an average density of 15 units per acre. We wanted to show you what some of what 3 examples of 15 units can look like. So 15 units actually has a very wide range of design opportunity. They could be townhouses, they can be low-rise apartments, and they can be kind of more diversitized and spread out, like the one that you see on the left. Excuse me, on the right. No, we don't know exactly which types of developments will come in. It's going to depend heavily based off of the parcel size and parcel opportunity. But we'll see mostly developments around that look similar to this. So what is multifamily housing? Multifamily housing class based off of the MBTA requirements is 3 or more residential units, or 2 or more buildings. One thing that is very important to understand about what this overlay is that this is an overlay that goes on top of existing zoning. So if a developer comes in and wants to develop any parcel that's within the overlay, they have the ability to choose which zoning they want to comply with. If they want to comply with the MBTA overlay district, the mod, or with the existing district. So if we're on Main Street in GBD2, they can decide which zoning they want to comply with. It's just an overlay over existing zoning. A common question that we get is how will this affect the schools in our community? With any addition of housing, especially in a community like Winchester, more housing will mean more students. However, we want to make it clear that based off of the data that we know of what types of housing is going to be built in these zones, the amount of students really should not be considered significant. If we look at the 3 most recently approved buildings around these districts, so if we look at Fell's Hardware Store, Waterfield, and 10 Converse, between 40 and 50% of those units are either studio or single bedroom. And even based off of market research that has been presented to us, a lot of the units that are 2-bedroom are going to be occupied by single family older people downsizing. So although yes, there will be more students added to this, the number of students isn't going to be significant. So one of the things about this is that the projects are going to be as of right, which is the main change, the biggest difference between what is allowed, what is currently allowed, and what will be allowed in MBTA communities, is that projects will be able to go by right. Even though this project is by right, they still have to go through a review process. And we've set that review process up to be as similar to as it is in the CBD as possible. The planning board will still be the site plan review authority. And they will still look to commissions like Design Review and Historical Commission and Disability Access Commission, just like they do today, in order to help them through that review process. We're also creating design standards, which are going to be which are going to help us enforce what buildings are going to look like and how the area is going to feel. Those do not need to be submitted with our compliance. So that's something that we are going to be working on as a planning board and with the rest of the community moving forward. So what is a site plan review? The site plan review is an approval process, just like we have today. The one thing that we need to make sure with our site plan review is that we can't reasonably delay a project for any reason. However, we can set expectations to developers who are coming in to say these are what we want, and this is what we would like to see, and we can still work with developers to get a good project out of that. Will all the units, all 1,220 units, be built? No, there's no way that that would happen. As we mentioned earlier, roughly 750 of those units have already been built, and we are only required to zone. We aren't required to build. We aren't discouraging building, but the number of units being built is not going to be as high as the 1,220. Will all of the will all these units be affordable, or will any of this be affordable? The MBTA Communities Act is actually not an affordable housing mandate. It does allow us to include affordable housing, but it doesn't require all to be affordable. So 10% of units will be affordable. We do get to add an additional 5% for projects over 25 units, and those units will go to our subsidized housing inventory. But as a total, we do not include the additional housing that aren't subsidized as our housing subsidized housing inventory. So the most important thing to know, I think, is that the planning board, planning department, and ZRAC have put forth a model that is compliant with the state law. We've done as much as we can to reduce the impact on our on the built environment that we have. And I think that we have a really good solution to the state's mandate. So at this time, I'll open up to questions. You'll have to raise your hand, and I will answer them in the order that they come. I'm going to have to unmute everyone as they do that. So, Pamela, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I was going to ask you to define overlay district, which you did, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And also thank you to everybody for the amount of work that you put into this, because it's not fun. My question is, can you clarify, you said they can choose to follow one or the other, but can you clarify if you have an overlay district, the underlying zoning still holds, or does it nullify the underlying zoning? Can you just clarify that for me, please?
The underlying zoning still holds if the developer chooses to use that underlying zoning.
So the developer could choose to use the overlay zoning, which is different than the underlying.
Yes. Yeah, they can choose either one.
But it's different than the underlying in that it allows you to build more, but is it more permissive in things like height or setbacks or those kinds of things?
No, we've matched the dimensional requirements with what is existing in those sub-districts. So the only major change, there will be some minor changes in order for us to reach compliance, but the only major change that you're going to see that we're going to have is that residential housing can be built by right. When it comes to the dimensions and setbacks and all the dimensional requirements and development standards, those all remain the same as what is currently in the underlying zone.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Daniel?
So question, is the town gonna, so it's optional upon the developer to choose whether they're gonna go to the regular zoning or the MOD zoning. Is the town gonna be taking a stance on that at all? Like encouraging people to, and developers to use the MOD, or they're gonna be neutral about it? I'm just curious.
That's certainly a good question. I'd actually like to open that question up to the planning board. If anyone on the planning board has an answer to it, I'll tell you based off of how developments work currently, they will come through the planning department first. So there is a review process even before the formal review process happens. I would say that in a lot of ways, the underlying zoning remains the more favorable zoning. But Dia, would you like to go further into that?
Well, I just, yeah, so once it's in the zoning, the planning board really doesn't have a preference, but what the zoning does is establish priorities. And as Taylor pointed out, one of our priorities is, he didn't point this up, I'm sure he was about to. One of our priorities is to continue with street level commercial. And what we are hoping is that the existing underlying zoning, which does allow for street level commercial by right, would be preferable for people. And we are hoping that as we move forward on our North Main Street re-envisioning, that we can make it more enticing for people to use that underlying zoning so we can continue to have first floor commercial.
So anyone else? We encourage more questions and comments. Actually, whether you have them, oh, thank you. It actually helps me a lot if you have questions. Lauren, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you so much. Great presentation. It's been fascinating to watch the progress of this whole project. I was just curious, what are the most common questions that you're getting, or the most common misunderstandings that you think people have around this article? Thank you.
Yep. So the most common questions that I am getting and the planning board are getting are the increase of school children. That's why that one was included. I think that we can do a little bit better at telling that story, but that one, the difference between overlay and underlying overlying zoning and underlying zoning is definitely one that's common. How can we continue to encourage ground floor commercial is another popular one, which is something that we're really trying hard to do. Let's see, planning board, what are some of the other ones that we keep getting asked?
I mean, there was parsing over the language for it, but I think we worked together and resolved those. And otherwise, I think how it would affect the developers sort of process, I think is probably, I think you've covered it, how they would choose an overlay versus an underlying zoning and what that would mean for the property or the result.
Yeah, actually, another one is how did we come up with our sub-districts? That took a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of meetings. ZRAC, super helpful. Thank you again for helping us reach something that I think a lot of us are really happy with. It wasn't just an arbitrary decision. It took a lot of work. So I think that those are some of the most common ones. Hopefully that or Deb, are you raising your hand because you have a question or because you want to add in?
One of the ones we've heard a lot is that people think that we are going to add an additional 1,200 units to these areas. And I think it's because people look at that and they think, oh, we're adding 1,200 units. And as Taylor pointed out, we're actually using the existing density. So we're not actually adding that many more units. I don't know what the exact number is, if it is at all, but we're really able, luckily, to use our existing density. So we're not adding an extra 1,200 units. We're essentially matching the existing capacity.
Meredith, you may unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Deb, I was rewatching when you met with the select board and talked about this with them earlier in the month. And I was wondering if you could I remember years ago when the whole area was, the whole rezoning went through. What is Main Street going to look like again as you go out of the town where the Rotary is? I remember business owners concerned that if they owned property, they would have liked to have done first floor residential. If they converted their property into some type of development. Did I hear you just say you're going to try to encourage the first floor business or retail or commercial, or could we end up seeing some of these buildings being converted to complete residential, first floor included? That's my question. In that area coming out of north of the Rotary, where the purple area is, I think. Is that where we are?
Yeah, so that's going to be GBD2. So right here, I think maybe you can see my cursor. Right here is where the Stop and Shop is. So if we go up here, and then here's Parkview on the
in the blue area, will we see that a similar situation? Will we lose that commercial, first floor commercial?
So I know that you asked Deb, and Deb, I will give you an opportunity, but I just want to say that that we are doing everything that we possibly can to encourage ground floor retail. One of the things about MBTA 3A is that it does allow for residential by right, which does give developers the opportunity to develop just residential as they want, if they want. However, based off of the work that we're doing, not just with MBTA 3A, but with the work that we're going to be doing and in the middle of with rezoning what is currently Mod 3, you're actually rezoning the underlying zoning of Mod 3 as well from North Main Street. We're putting on a tremendous amount of effort to continue to encourage developers to keep that ground floor retail. So I do believe that it's going to be. I don't think it's going to. We cannot guarantee that every single project is going to retain its ground floor retail, but the work that we've put in to make sure that it remains the most economically feasible option for developers and the most realistic option, we've done our best to make sure that stays within this bylaw.
A quick follow-up. What do you mean in terms of you doing everything? What kinds of incentives would you be talking about with these folks?
So this is with our reason with making our underlying zoning more interesting for developers than our overlay, we are going to encourage them to use the existing underlying zoning. So, for example, with the work that we're doing in North Main Street in this purple area, using the underlying zoning and keeping the commercial would allow you to build higher or build larger or have more advantageous uses than just doing your by right residential. So if you keep your commercial, you get to have a bigger, more profitable building. That's something that we're doing to try to retain that commercial as much as we possibly can.
So how many stories are we talking about? I think,
So
are we at 4 stories in that area, in the purple area?
the existing, I
What is it?
believe, is 3.5, and we're
3.5.
retaining whatever the existing is.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're retaining everything that what is currently in our current zoning bylaws. We're retaining all of those dimensions
So if they choose
for
residential,
MBTA.
excuse me, I'm sorry. If they choose residential by right in those areas, then again, how many stories can they put in comparison to
For
the-
mod 3, it's 3 stories.
pardon me?
For the purple area, it's a maximum of 3 stories if they choose the mod zoning.
Okay, okay. From my own perspective, I think that would be less overwhelming to I would like to see the commercial. It just depends on how it all falls out, what it looks like as this proceeds. Thank you for your responses.
Yep, of course. Go ahead, Dia.
Yeah, I just, one of the, I think when you were talking, we sometimes, when we talk about North Main Street, the planning board usually typically talks about things north of Skillings Road. So I think the mod 1, what you're talking about between the Rotary and Skillings Road. So the Center Business District underlying zoning has a number of incentives for people, for developers, which would, as Taylor pointed out, which allowed them to get more height. You get bonuses for putting parking underneath structures. You get bonuses for green space. So those are pretty useful because they do. So those are incentives for them to use the existing zoning. If you look at a lot of the buildings going up on the right side of mod 1, we're looking at, like, for instance, Winchester Savings Bank. We're looking at the Stop and Shop. There are the gas stations there. The savings bank probably isn't going to go anywhere. Stop and Shop might be redeveloped to have, housing residential above the existing. It's a big 1-story building. I don't know what their, how much weight they can put on there. That would be, but, in the best of all worlds, we would imagine that they would put, residential on top of Stop and Shop, because either that or solar panels, I hope. But we're not going to see an awful lot of redevelopment along the right side of mod 1, just because the existing buildings they're pretty big and they're going to be there for a bit. There's more of a concern, I think, on the left side, but there's already significant portions of that which are going to be, so we've included. There's existing residential buildings in there. There are only a few buildings that might be targeted here. So, we know the Fells Hardware site, if it gets redeveloped, will have first floor commercial. So I think, there is a possibility, but the underlying zoning, as Taylor pointed out, really does provide an incentive to use that instead. And developers tend to want to work with towns. And what we've found is that when we speak with developers, they like to enter into conversations because it makes everything a little easier for them. So I don't have as many concerns about mod 1 as I do, say, on mod 3, just because the scale is different. But we've also tried to make sure that, as you know, when we come forward, hopefully this fall with our North Main Street redevelopment plans, we're trying to make sure that the scale decreases as we go up north. So you will still have smaller buildings towards the north, and anyone who uses the MBTA 3A overlay districts will not be able to use any of the underlying incentives to increase their size. So that's a big hit. And I think I just repeated everything Taylor said, so I apologize.
Any other questions for myself or for the planning board? Any suggestions, anything that you would like to see from the planning board or from myself before town meeting next week? Any additional details? George, go ahead.
Taylor, I was wondering, I've kind of been listening to what we're gonna gain from this and stuff, but what is the state gaining from this? They created this zoning thing that we're gonna comply with. What are they gonna get out of it? It doesn't seem like we're gonna increase housing, multifamily housing. Why are they going through this effort? And if they do go through with it and it doesn't work out, what's to change them from changing the requirements?
That's certainly a good question. The state gains, I mean, the reason the state passed it in the first place was to increase housing opportunity across the 170 some communities. But by doing so, by inherently leaving it up to each individual community to make up their own rules, I think that your question is legitimate. You know, if you're going to let every town make up their own zoning, what does the state ultimately get? I mean, what will come out of this? No matter what, there will be an increase in housing density. The one interesting thing is, you know, when the state passed it, they said, oh, we're going to see tens of thousands of new units across the state. In reality, they're not going to see even a fraction of that. Unfortunately, I don't have like a really good answer. I think my true answer would be too opinionated, and I just I think that the most important thing for us to focus on is that we need to comply. If we don't comply, we lose funding for projects that we need funding for, and we open us up to lawsuits that it would not be advantageous for us to open ourselves up to. So I think that your question is a good one, but in a lot of people's opinions, compliance is really just the most important thing. Does that answer your? I know it doesn't answer your question, but
yeah, no,
does that help?
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Pamela.
Taylor, could I chime in on that one?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. So one of the things that Winchester has going for it is that the Central Business District rezoning about 10 years ago actually increased the density to the point where we don't have to worry about MBTA 3A. But if MBTA 3A had come around before then, we would be scrambling. Winchester is unlike a lot of towns where they don't have the density or the, so there are a lot of towns where there is a substantial amount of rezoning going on to meet these requirements. So we're kind of in the middle, in the sweet spot, because we don't have to do a lot, but there are some towns which do have to do quite a bit to come into compliance. So I think looking at what we've got isn't completely indicative of what we're going to see from other towns. So, we just happen to be lucky. Well, or I should say we had, the previous planning board had the foresight to try to increase the density in the center business district to help the businesses there. So.
Pamela.
Hi, thank you. Thanks again. First, I want to say, Diab, I don't think that it's a bad thing for you to repeat what Taylor says sometimes, because it's confusing for a lot of folks. And I think hearing it more than once helps. And I think hearing it in slightly different wording helps. So I hope that makes you feel better. I always appreciate when you chime in. I gain a better understanding of things. So thank you. And Taylor, you had asked for some suggestions on this. And I think one of the things that might help, again, because it is kind of complex and nuanced, is, and we know that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of like scare information around town. And I'm not saying that nothing is justified, but my big thing is I like things based on facts. We want people to sort of make up their minds based on facts. Maybe if you guys can present something that is in clear form based on a lot of the misconceptions that you've already heard about, and delineate. So like, myth, this will add 1,200 new units. Fact, this is what it really means. Something like that, so that people have clear information that makes sense to them. I don't know if that suggestion is worthwhile or not. It's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's been suggested to us by another individual. So thank you for that. Having two people suggest that is probably a good thing. Jennifer.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the presentation. I guess I'll be number 3 also, echoing what Pamela just said, especially about the point that it doesn't need to be built. It's just zoned. But I specifically wanted to see if you could go back to the slide on the schools and school enrollment in terms of things that might be worth adding in, is if you could put, where does Winchester fall on that table you have there? Because I think you will get asked that question. Because you have 2/3 of public school districts, but where exactly has our own enrollment been going?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I don't have an answer for that right now, but I know that we've done some information searching. But thank you for the comment. I can get that, and if you're interested, I can send it to you as well if it's something that you're looking for before town meeting. Sally.
Just, unmute, yes. Follow up to Jen's question, reading through the town meeting member materials for starting next week's town meeting. I think it was in the FinCom report, or maybe it was in one of the accompanying memos from a range of sources, but there is a school enrollment projection in the town meeting member materials. And I think that it shows a slight, steady decline, which I personally find surprising, but that's just me, because I don't necessarily have all the facts. But anyway, you all can search for it too. The data is there. That was what I had.
Thank you. Yeah, we're actually seeing a regional decline, specifically in suburbs. So, But I don't know if what you looked at, Sally, has their projection, if their projection includes MBTA. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But thank you. We'll take a look at that. Anyone else? Questions or comments for the board or for myself? This will be the last time that we'll be able to that we'll be bringing this to the public for town meeting. So
Pam's hand is raised again. I don't know if that's again or just from before.
Apologies, I didn't put my hand down, I'm sorry, but I will add a second thank you because it's an enormous amount of work and I don't think people, well, I think the people at this meeting appreciate it, but I don't think that all people necessarily understand or appreciate that. So I did want to highlight that and just say thank you again.
thank you, really appreciate that. And I know everyone else from this current board and from previous boards do as well. Daniel?
I just want to express my, I guess, support for the idea of preserving the first floor commercial retail. I think we don't have enough, and I think it's been going the other way. And I do think it makes sense for the vibrancy of the town to maintain sort of an active commercial function within it. So I think I really appreciate that sort of focus.
Thank you. Anyone else? Or we're going to cut it off. Okay, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. A planning board meeting is going to follow this immediately. For any of those who wish to stick around, feel free, but this concludes the public information session. Thank you very much for joining. Carrie, I'm just going to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Yeah, everyone take a break. Well done, Taylor. This was a good turnout. I'm excited to see people taking the opportunity to join us. This is good. It's good. Fixing my lights. Hold on. Ellen, did you want to, we're sort of in hang time between the between the public information session and the open meeting, but I am noticing that we have a couple of hands that went up either at the end of Taylor's time or let me see. Ellen, can you unmute yourself now?
Can you hear me?
I can. Is there anything that you wanted to add? We're sort of in a weird gap here, but we'd be happy to hear from you.
Yeah. No, and I was I did have a question. It's kind of wasn't really pertinent to the hearing, but I just wanted to confirm, since I'm looking at the town meeting, handout that I physically have, that there will be an amended site plan review thing with that with letter G that you guys voted, because
Yes. So
and did that just
go ahead.
does that just get handed out at town meeting now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You'll get a slightly updated version on the night of town meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm, because it wasn't really pertinent to to the hearing, but, I mean, it is, but anyway, just wanted to make sure we're still on,
Yeah,
you know, getting that out there.
Yep, there will be a
Okay.
different
My,
version.
you know, my one, you know, my cause, so, thank you.
You know, you represent it well, and we're glad to have you.
Uh,
Ca-
Thank you.
Carrie,
Yep.
Carrie, this is Brian here. I think that they actually did update it. What they did is weird in the motion booklet. The article is the original article, and then the motion has the amendment in it. So it is actually in there already. It's just really confusing the way they did it, but it is in there.
All
Oh,
right.
is it at the, is it at the end of the article?
So there's the article, and then there's the motion
Yeah.
that follows the article. The article is the original article. The motion has the changes in it, if that makes sense. So if you look
It does,
at
but
page 17, for instance, which is where the motion language is in the motion book that we got.
I think that has to do with what was sent out to the town. So the articles
Exactly.
have to
I
match what the.
I don't
warrant
have
says.
that. My page 17 is just the very, it doesn't have any of that. So,
Yeah, I have the concluding.
Heather, you can clarify.
What you have is the motion booklet. So the motion booklet in the front, in the beginning, is what is on the warrant. You cannot change the warrant once you submit it to the town, right, to the select board. And then what is after is the motion. So I found it in order to include it as part of the motion. So that's why you're seeing it as what was put in the motion, in the warrant booklet, and then what the actual motion is.
Okay.
I'm just saying that what it's not in what I got in the mail as a town, maybe because I'm not a town meeting member, I don't know. So, but if it's there, it's there, so.
I'm also not a town meeting member, and Elle and I have the same version you have. So.
Okay, because
So that's the warrant, that's as Heather just pointed out, that warrant came out a couple weeks before any of the language was changed.
Okay.
So you can get the warrant is what goes out to all residents.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire town. The motion booklet only goes to town meeting members, but you are welcome to look at it. It's on the town meeting's website. And those are the
Okay.
motions that'll be called in.
Okay, because it's not in this booklet.
Nope, it would
just like to
not, it
clarify.
would not have been, the change came in after the warrant was closed.
Correct. Okay.
Mhm.
Fine. It's you're right. I don't understand it, but as long as you do. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
Are we gonna take these questions? John, John's has his hand up.
Yeah, I think Ellen's had been up for a bit and we had some hang time, so I wanted to make sure we had heard from her. We're happy to hear from you, John, if you have a quick.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, he's muted.
Oh, okay.
Try again. How about now?
You're not looking for me, are you?
No,
No, sorry,
another John,
John Stevens.
Yeah,
It's-
that's what I thought.
it says you can unmute.
Muted? No.
Ah,
Yep, you're good.
Oh,
You're
okay.
good.
The screen still says mute. No, my question simply is whether the town has exercised all of the powers that it could retain pursuant to the model zoning bylaw that the Commonwealth pushed out. Form-based zoning in particular.
we've made every effort to meet, I guess you could call it the minimum compliance standards. So I think we've made space to sort of clarify some of the design guidelines, and we've met the criteria that were pretty clearly outlined for us. I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
Well, I was looking, excuse me, I was looking specifically at, and maybe this has already been done, I don't have the motion booklet. But section 8 point, I think it's 8.11.7, in the second sentence, it has the word only in it. which I was asking be stricken, and then also a section G, which permitted form-based zoning. I don't know if that's in the.
We did add in the motion, there is section G for architectural design. So that has been added and only was discussed, and with the addition of architectural design between council and the planning board discussion, we felt like we had held space for all of the regulations that we would like in there.
Understood. I guess I don't see a need for only. That's all I'm saying. Why restrict ourselves?
It's a good question, but we are going to wrap up the comments on it. We mostly wanted feedback on Taylor's presentation and the overview. Any last comments from particularly Heather, if she wants to add anything? Her hand is still up.
Oh, sorry, my hands are still up from before. I didn't put it down. I don't have any comments. But
Okay, so-
Carrie, if you would like to meet to go over your timing and everything, please let me know.
Okay, will do. Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm sorry to sort of give that such cursory treatment. We just wanted to get your question on the floor, John, and now we are going to move on to opening the meeting. Do we need to do anything to transition to that, or do we just sort of?
Nope, you just go. The meeting's already open, so
Okay, do we have
we're
any?
just going to go right to updates.
Right. What do we have for updates?
I can give I can give two updates. We heard back from Starbucks. We will be working with Starbucks has agreed to actually for Brian and John. You may not even know what we're talking about here. To summarize it, I can go into more detail with you individually if you want, but the film treatment on on Starbucks windows is too dark. So it needs to change. But unfortunately, it can't change because it faces a blank wall. So what we've worked with Starbucks on and what we've agreed with them is they will work with the Winchester Cultural Council to put up a mural on that window instead. So instead of a blank black window, we'll have a mural that's painted by a local artist or something, whatever the historical commission, Cultural Council wants to do. So that's going to be kind of I expect more detail on that this summer. It is going to be a process, but they have agreed at a corporate level to work with us on that. So that's good news. That's my update. I don't think I have any others.
Okay.
Can I go ahead, Carrie?
Yeah, go for it, Dan.
Yeah, so I just want to give a brief update on the economic feasibility analysis.
Great.
Taylor mentioned that in his presentation for 3A. So the state restricts the amount of deeded affordable housing in the 3A districts to 10% unless you can show through an economic feasibility analysis that higher levels are economically feasible. So we had our consultant paid for by the state came out with an initial report, which did not completely match what we were hoping it would do, which would give us the opportunity to extend our center business district inclusionary zoning into the 3A. So they ran us, two things came out. Sorry, my brain's not working. One is that the concern we had was about rounding up or rounding down in terms of the percentage. The state rounds down and the town rounds up. In the economic feasibility analysis, the analysis was done by rounding up. So they wanted to take a more conservative approach, which means that we can use the numbers in the report to compare directly to what our existing inclusionary zoning is, which is rounding up. They ran an additional analysis for 15 units And they showed that we could do 10% at 80% AMI for 15 units, and that would be economically feasible. However, we still have this donut hole between our existing, we start at 6 units in our existing zoning, and from 6 to 10, we require there be an affordable unit. That analysis has not been done. So if the board wants to modify the inclusionary housing component at a future town meeting, we would need to get that analysis done. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Does anyone else have any updates that they want to share now? Okay. We have 2 sets of minutes that we are hoping to get approved. So the minutes from Tuesday, March 26th. Does anyone have any corrections or comments on the minutes?
Shoot, what do I do? I know one of them
Well,
had a
well,
whole string.
what was the date? I have April 9th.
I have we have April 9th and we have March 26th in the packet.
Okay.
I was going logically, but we can go backward. We can start with April 9th. There are 2 sets from April 9th. There is the minutes from the meeting, and then there's the executive session. Does anyone have any corrections or comments on the minutes from April 9th? The meeting.
I have a question on the minutes from April 9th.
Yep.
On page, the last sentence of page 2.
Yep.
Going into, last sentence of page 2, going into page 3. It says, on February 6, 1998, the Winchester Historical Commission found the property is not listed on the National Register, thus not subject to the demo delay bylaw. And I don't know if it's a question, I mean, that I think that was a statement of fact back then. But I was confused whether that building is still no longer subject to the demolition delay bylaw, since the demolition delay bylaw has subsequently changed since 1998. I don't know that it changes the minutes, but I think it'd be confusing if, in fact, that structure is subject to the demolition delay bylaw under the new the changes that have happened in the last 20 years.
Once, and if anyone knows better than me, correct me, but once the historical commission makes their decision, that's their decision forever, even if it changes. But Nick, do you actually happen to know?
I'm sorry, I missed that portion.
No worries. Once the historical commission makes their decision on approving or denying a demo delay, that's the decision. Even if they come back 10 years later, their original decision stands. Is that correct?
I think so.
I believe it is. Yeah.
I think I agree with, well, I agree with Taylor.
Yeah, so that's 3 of us who are pretty sure, or who think, yeah.
I just want to understand, because the law had changed, I didn't know if that was still, but that's fine. It doesn't actually impact the minutes so much as me wanting to understand whether that was still true or was only true in 1998. So that's helpful. Thank you.
I think importantly, the Historic Commission did review this current project under the current law and approved the project. So
yeah.
Do we need to go back and check any boxes or check the procedure? But I think the steps have been taken. It's a good call out though, and a good learning point. Are there any other corrections or comments on the meeting minutes from April 9th?
I just wanted to note there's a misspelling on page 1. My name's misspelled, but I'll send that on to Nancy. It's not of any note.
Okay. Okay. Well, you'll just have to keep serving a little longer in positions until we learn your name. Any other Scrivener or other corrections? So can we get a motion to approve these with the corrected version of Dieb's name?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
And then a roll call vote, Dieb,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Brian.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so we have approved the meeting minutes. Do we separately approve the minutes for the executive session?
We're going to do that privately. We'll move that to another meeting. It's an
Okay,
executive session. We don't approve minutes of executive sessions in public session, but we
okay,
can.
But are the minutes of the executive session in the public packet?
No, they're not. No, minutes are not actually ever in the public packet.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Are there any corrections or comments on the minutes from March 26th? Except, page 3 has that weird collection of J's under item 6.
That was my only note.
It's eye-catching.
It's very
So
eye-catching.
are there any other comments or corrections to be made to the minutes from March 26th?
No.
Take a motion to approve them.
I move that we approve the minutes of March 26th
Thank
as
you.
amended.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nick. And a roll call vote, Brian,
I think that was,
Sorry.
who was the second on that?
I was.
I've got,
It was John.
John.
Yes.
Okay.
okay, sorry. Thank you, John. Okay, roll call vote. Brian,
I'm going to abstain from these minutes. I wasn't on the committee.
great. John,
I'm also going to abstain. I wasn't.
okay, Nick,
Aye. Or approve.
Dieb,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So with three ayes and 2 abstentions, we approve the meeting minutes from March 26th. Okay, next up, Taylor, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yep. Okay, so tonight we have with us. Sorry, I was eating. Eric, who is going to help us give a presentation. Actually, let me give you co-host so that you can unmute yourself. A presentation about a solution that we can use to better our community engagement process. This is something that we've talked about in certain depths over the past, but Eric is here to give us a possible solution to bettering our community engagement. So Eric, off to you. You have screen sharing. You have anything that you need to make your presentation.
Thanks, Taylor. Are you guys able to hear me all right?
Yep.
Great. So let me share my screen. Are you guys able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much and good evening, everyone. I'm excited to share, as Taylor mentioned, a little bit about some of the work that I've done in Boston and other municipalities and share a little bit how it can apply to Winchester, especially around improving community engagement processes. Just a quick introduction about me. Again, my name is Eric Oyoung. Raised outside of Boston in Westboro and really consider the Boston area my home. For a long time, I've really been interested at the intersection of technology and the public sector. I did my undergrad at Harvard looking at technology and public education. And it's really from some of that work and research that I had done as an undergrad that led me into urban planning and land use and development, which, reflecting back on my childhood, it's interesting to see how my parents in large part decided to live in Massachusetts and Westboro from some of the land use and transportation policies that were made before they moved into Westboro. After graduating college, I started my career in the technology industry, first at Microsoft working on the PowerPoint product. And it was a lot of fun to, teach an old dog new tricks on the PowerPoint product, which I believe is 30 years old now. And after that, I got a chance to work at a technology company in San Francisco called Swiftly, which builds software for public transit agencies. And that really solidified my interest and excitement to do public sector work and apply, cutting edge technology to making people's lives on a day-to-day basis better. So before I kind of jump into the scope for the particular project for Winchester, I wanted to share a little bit about a case study of the work that we've done in East Boston in particular. In that community, they've gone through a rezoning process, not unlike the 3A process that Winchester is through the process right now. And it's really great hearing from Taylor all the amazing work that the board and the team have done to be compliant with the 3A guidelines and requirements. And one of the things that really inspired me to start some of my work in East Boston was a lot of the confusion that can exist around planning and development, how it works, and how an average citizen can find some of this more approachable, especially when you consider the technical language of setbacks and FAR. Kind of 3 buckets of the types of work that we've done. One was just to inform people. So we done a lot of in-depth data analysis, a lot of GIS analysis in particular of different neighborhoods. We presented this to community groups as well as to elected officials to help kind of educate people on the status quo today, how zoning can impact the future, as well as how specific development projects fit into that vision. Secondly, we've done a ton of different engagement tools as well as specific activities. And this has brought in, hundreds of new voices that traditionally haven't been involved with land use planning and development, and, created a forum that, really allowed people who maybe didn't feel comfortable before to meaningfully engage. So, online digital whiteboards in particular have been something that we found effective, especially in a COVID world and post-COVID world, as a way to bring in voices that maybe are a little bit shyer and don't want to raise their voices during a public meeting. Lastly, we've done a ton of different approaches for aligning interests. As you guys are probably well aware, members of the public have a wide range of experiences and expectations and philosophies on how neighborhoods should change over time. And we've created a range of digital tools as well as offline tools to help bridge some of those gaps and help community members come to some common understanding of what the long term looks like. Any questions so far? So I'll do 2 quick demos of tools that we've already deployed in Boston and have been really effective at helping make a lot of this more accessible. So the first tool is actually the first one that we built and deployed for Boston. This pulls out of openly available data that the city publishes. And if we were to do something with Winchester, we work closely with Taylor and the planning team, as well as with other departments to bring in that data so that this can be real time and as suited for Winchester. So I'll just jump into the Percy Explore tool. This is a web-based application. You can access it from any computer or mobile device. And what you're seeing here is a map of the Olson Brighton neighborhood in Boston, which coincidentally is right now beginning a rezoning process. And you can see some of the planning areas here outlined in gray, as well as some demographic information about the different zip codes. Once you zoom in, this pulls in information from the open data sets that I talked about, and it visualizes different types of development activity as it goes through the process in Boston. And for any of these, you can see that they're highlighted in different statuses. You can also click here on the layers functionality to bring in, say, public transit and where the existing bus lines are, flood risk, which certainly is top of mind for many communities, current zoning, and so forth. If I click on any of these bubbles, this particular project is a recently filed multi-family project in the Alston neighborhood. You should see some high-level statistics about it, street view of what the current site looks like, and this links out to the official project site that the Boston Planning Department has for this project under review. And if we're to do something Winchester, all of this is customizable and to really meet the needs of the department and constituents. You'll also notice that once I'm zoomed in, we pull in parcel level information. And so you can click on any of these to see existing uses, information that comes out of the assessing bird. And so this can be very helpful, especially when a developer is looking at different opportunities in a neighborhood and figuring out how that may or may not fit into a project that they might want to pursue. Last thing I'll show also here, at the zoomed in level, we also provide a range of customizable charts and data points, so you can kind of see how sale prices have changed over time, the distribution of bedrooms in this particular area, whether or not it's investor owned or owner occupied. And so again, these are kind of all customizable if we end up working with you guys to meet the needs of Winchester. Any questions about the Explore tool?
I don't have any questions. It's a cool tool.
I have questions, but I'm going to hold them till the end. I'd like to see the rest of your stuff first.
So I've got some questions as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I can hold off until the end as well.
We can do that then. So the second tool I'll share, and this is also something fairly new that we launched called Percy Engage. So this is actually a tool built on top of kind of fairly robust and tested tools that have been used in New York City for participatory budgeting and community engagement, as well as in Barcelona, which is where the tool had originally come out of. And so we've adapted it and built on top of it for land use planning and development. And in East Boston, we launched a site called EC Speaks to really give people an alternative to traditional channels and lower some of the barriers to entry to understand not only current proposals that have come out of the planning department and other departments in the city, but also have an opportunity to submit their own ideas of what the future of the neighborhood looks like. So I'll walk through a couple pieces of this site. And again, for Winchester, we can mix and match different functionality to suit the city's, the town's needs. I'll show you briefly this proposals page. So this is a map visualization of all the different priorities that primarily the planning department has come up with in response to rezoning. So what types of capital investments and other infrastructure investments are appropriate to accommodate continued growth in the East Boston neighborhood. And so you can see here a range of different things, from greenways to improvements to open spaces, all listed here. And for any of these, you can click in, get extra information about how that ties into the planning process. You'll also notice here that there's a few that are community submitted. And so Andrew is a community member who had written a little bit about wanting to see a new greenway access point as an example. And the site allows anybody to create an account and go in and submit a new proposal to get posted on the site for other people to see. Jumping back, there's also this functionality to see community meetings. So this is something where you can see a calendar of all the different public meetings, as well as potentially community neighborhood meetings that are ongoing and related to this space. And again, this is something that you can have functionality for community members to submit them. And so you can have a neighborhood association, for example, maybe is posting about a project happening in their neighborhood for that to show up publicly for people to see. And then the last thing I'll show on this site is this ongoing commitments tracker. So there's a number of investments that are already happening from various departments in Boston. And you can see how those investments are categorized, their current status, and again, kind of drill in. So as an example, in East Boston, flood resiliency is a major challenge, and they're working on building out flood walls as well as building out sea berms. And so those are in various stages right now. And this is something where you can communicate this a lot more effectively to community members as they understand where that fits into the future of their neighborhood. Great. And so jumping into the pilot details for Winchester that we put together, as Taylor mentioned, the goal is to really understand how some of these tools can complement public meetings, improve information accessibility, and promote inclusive participation. I think things like this meeting, obviously, of course, are valuable for residents, but sometimes people perhaps aren't able to make this time and they still want to have their voices heard. So we found that certainly in East Boston and other communities, having some site where people can find out about information async on their own time and engage has been really valuable. This project would be about 6 months. The goal would be to have the site set up by the end of June, and then afterwards continue to collect information, especially feedback from community members of this board. What this would look like is we would first start with deploying a system of record where we would actually pull from for the current plans, any site plan reviews, subdivision reviews, and have that available so that it could get pulled into the platform. We would build out features based off of town requirements, whether it's certain GIS layers or other types of graphs, kind of in the second part of the pilot. And then the last part here in terms of deliverables would be to provide documentation and training about the platform, as well as make sure that members of the public can appropriately engage. And so with that, I'd love to open up for questions. Thank you for listening. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm not sure who's moderating this discussion. Carrie, are you moderating?
I think it could be a casual discussion unless we start really tripping on each other, but go ahead.
Okay. So I have a couple of notes here. One is that this is a very data-driven approach, which I commend you on, and that's the way we should go forward. But unfortunately, Winchester doesn't have an awful lot of data. And so, for instance, we have only, I think, over the last couple of years had electronic building department submissions for permits. So any data prior to that is on a piece of paper in a filing cabinet somewhere. So I don't think, and the resources are not there to load any to backfill those data into a database. So it's sort of like we'd be starting from scratch almost. So that's a concern of mine, because this all depends upon having complete and up-to-date data. And I should note that we still have problems with our assessors database being incorrect at times. The other question I have is it possible to overlay other data which isn't, so for instance, one of the things that I'm interested in is looking at heat maps for neighborhoods so that we could overlay that. So just what sort of GIS data can you import? The other, I'm just going to go really quickly through these and then I'll shut up. The outreach stuff looks interesting, but we already have an existing town calendars. So one should always only have one place to go to for information. And so my question would be, how do we make sure if we go this route that we keep things synchronized? And then the Eastie Speaks thing was interesting, but who was the client for that? Was that the BPDA? Or was that some other part of the Boston government? Because in terms of Winchester, it seems like it addressed things that the select board would be interested in. It looked like it was more than just from Winchester's perspective. It was across a number of different boards' purviews. And so I'm just wondering and then that's it. That's all I have to say.
A lot of great questions, yeah. I'll just go through them one by one. Definitely a great point, and it's good to know that there's a lot of historical paper-based records. Based off of my conversations with Taylor in terms of the goals for the pilot, I think it's a lot about what plans are happening right now. So I know you guys are not only doing 3A, but also looking at rezoning the light industrial districts as well. So finding all of that information in one spot, making that accessible to community members. I don't think it necessarily relies on projects that maybe were submitted 10 years ago to be able to show there. But I think since a lot of the building permit data, for example, is already electronic, there should be a way for us to pull out of that existing system so that, you know, a member of the building department isn't double entering, or Taylor and his staff don't need to double enter things. The goal is to make this as seamless as possible. So hopefully that answers your first question. The second question about overlays of different data, you know, I love the idea of having heat maps, and I know urban heat islands effect is a big topic for a lot of municipalities. And so in terms of what the platform can support, you know, as long as it is available in a shapefile, that's easily importable. And even if it's, say, CSV or spreadsheet data, and there's a way for us to map it then to neighborhoods or something like that, that's easily visualizable. So I'm pretty sure most data we can support. In terms of outreach, I totally agree. If the town already has a joint calendar that shows everything all in one spot, no need to duplicate that. One way that we can do is, of course, link out to that calendar, or if we wanted to like embed a version on the engagement site, that certainly is an option. And finally, your question about EC Speaks. The client there, actually, it was more of a communal effort, so we got a chance to work with some neighborhood associations. And so it didn't have actually a formal client, and it was really an opportunity for members of the community to try something different and also have a different avenue to engage and express themselves. So you're definitely right. It definitely encompasses a lot more than maybe what just the planning department's responsible for. And that was kind of some of the goal of trying that out and seeing how that fits together. So hopefully that answers your last question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Taylor, did you want to ask your questions now?
No, you can ask first, please.
Brian, go ahead.
Thank you. This is the first time I've seen this, obviously. So I have silly like ground floor level questions. This is web-based. This is not a separate package. I mean, it's you'd log into a website, you'd enter a password, you'd get access to all of this. And if a member of the public were using that, could you make it unpassword protected? I'm just trying to understand how it would be for outreach. We have a lot of information, but sometimes people in town, if it's not easy to get at, they aren't getting it. So I'm just trying to understand how easy it is for a member of the public to understand this. And as a follow-up sort of that is, do you have a demo of this with demo data that we can look at and sort of understand, sort of play around with it, so to speak?
Yeah. So both of the sites that I was demoing today, those are live versions of the application. I can send links in the chat if you want to play around with it. There is no password protection for accessing kind of the top level of information, but of course, if you're trying to write a comment on a project or actually submit a proposal, that's where you need to create an account so that it can get linked up with an individual. But the goal is to make that as simple as possible. It's a website, and you can access it from any browser, including on mobile devices.
Thank you very much. I'd love to look around at it, and that would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
John or Nick, any questions you want to?
I don't have anything additional. It looks really powerful and really interesting.
Great. John, anything you wanted
Yeah,
to?
I do think it's a really interesting idea. But I think other people might be thinking this, how we're going to thinking about people in Winchester, getting them to engage with it. They sometimes, there's a lot of stuff on the town's website that you always have to mention that they could go there. We can't get them there. The idea of having one place to go is for everything that Diab was mentioning. would be nice, you know, if you could really connect the two. It's just, you know, it's just hard to get people to, you know,
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah,
They'll talk
and,
to you
and
a
Taylor and
lot,
I,
but
yeah, no, definitely. And, John, to your point, Taylor and I talked a lot about what the integration looks in the website. And our goal is to try to find a way that people are able to find it easily, certainly if they go to the website. And so whether it's putting it in a frame that can get embedded onto the existing site, or some other way, the goal is not to bifurcate the traffic and for people to know, hey, if I want to find out about what's happening on the planning board and in the planning department, they have one spot they can go, and maybe it links out to other resources. But to really make that something that people not only know where to find, but also perhaps are motivated to go back and engage, especially if that's where they're able to see what their neighbors are thinking about a project, where they're able to submit public comment in a more streamlined fashion. Then it can be a repeat engagement and build perhaps a little bit more of that ongoing feedback loop that we've seen be very productive in Boston and other municipalities.
That's great. I think the co-urbanized site, which we used during the master plan process, was really helpful for expanding the level of engagement that we had with a variety of voices in town. I think it was particularly useful because it was a single project that we were getting feedback on. I have real concerns about sort of having ongoing conversations about the entire town at the same time. So it would be maybe helpful to be able to highlight, feedback on North Main or feedback on a certain, project that's come up. I saw the feature where you could suggest a project and I was like, oh no, it'd be stop signs and speed bumps and pocket parks. And it would just have so many things that could be proposed, which would be great. It would be nice for folks to have access pretty easily, but we could end up just fracturing our efforts pretty quickly. But it's an interesting tool, and I think the idea of engaging a wider number of voices is something that we're actively pursuing. But Taylor, I'll let you kind of wrap it up. I know your questions will be better educated because you've got a background in this.
Yeah, I mean, I for the planning board, I mean, I see a lot of opportunity here as being able to visualize our work. I definitely agree that we have. I field calls multiple times a week asking where to find things on the website. So I know that there's definitely a virtual and digital information problem. And I do actually find this as being a potential solution to that. I don't actually see it as it being another thing, but it's a conversation that we should all have. I've worked with platforms like this a lot in the past, and I've always found them very successful. So I think that we need to have a conversation about it, and how does it work in Winchester specifically, and how can we make it work? Because Eric can help us set it up, but how do we? Eric's not going to be holding our hands the whole time. So how do we make sure that that it's something that we utilize to its best ability possible? Go ahead, Diab.
Yeah, the other concern I have and is maturity of the product, longevity of the company behind it, and our ability to extract the data if we discover that we need to move to another platform. Those are big questions in my mind. I don't. Those are just concerns I always have when I look at something. If the planning board is going to be investing resources into this, I want to make sure that it's going to be something we can rely upon for, until the next major platform change in, 10 years, and that if we do transition, we'll be able to transition smoothly. So those don't need to answer those concerns right now, but those are just things that I worry about.
Yeah, maybe just to briefly touch on it. Yeah, definitely appreciate the concern there, and I guess for full transparency, the company's been around since 2022. If we were to do something,
You're muted, Eric.
There we go.
sorry, did it mute
Mhm.
halfway through or?
Yeah, you said 2022, and then it.
Sorry. Since 2022. So, if we were to work with Winchester, it would be among the earlier clients, but this is something that I'm certainly committed to. And, I think if we're to work with you guys, it really would be a hand-in-hand partnership to help develop the platform and make sure that it suits your needs. I know that there are other companies out there that have perhaps similar functionality, but it tends to be a little bit more of a one-size-fits-all for each town and kind of deploying existing software. So I think that's one area that is different. On the point about extracting data, this is something that actually is a big thing for me. Some of the stuff that I did at my last job at Swiftly was deal with some of the vendor lock-in that municipal transit agencies experience, where they pick a vendor and it's very hard to get data out. And part of the value add we were bringing to public transit agencies was finding ways to get data out of old systems, because it was just so hard. And I know that ends up being such a pain to not only the transit agencies, but also members of the public that want to find information about the efficiency and operation of their system. So that's something that certainly you have my commitment for, that if for in the future we do a pilot and you decide to go a different direction, that all the data that's on the platform you guys have access to with no challenges.
Cool.
That's great. In the interest of time, what would our next steps be?
So we have another scheduled meeting to talk about this as a board on the 6th, I think. It's 2 weeks. I think it's the 6th. I'll follow up with everyone to make sure that we have that, and then we'll have that discussion. That will be a discussion internally. We'll look at scope, contract. We'll look at all of that, our possibilities, and then we'll come back and meet with Eric again after that.
Okay, that's great. Anyone else have a pressing question for Eric before we thank him sincerely for his presentation and the information? It's an exciting tool, in the same way that we worry about how, whether it will grow forever and serve us forever. I think we can all agree that our very stable town website will never do this. So I think growth is going to be important, and this could be a really great catalyst to get going on it. So I'm excited to talk more about it at our next meeting, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Anyone else?
Well,
Right.
yeah. Well, thank you again for the time, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
I'll post a link to the sites for anybody who wants to play around with it.
Yes,
Thank
please
you.
do. That's great.
Yeah, we actually don't have chat, so if you email it to me,
Okay.
I'll email, or if you actually you can email planningboard@winchester.us, and then they'll all get it.
Cool. And we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Great, interesting. Okay, we are a few minutes behind, almost 15 minutes behind. We have an ANR for 11 and 17 Brook Street. And I think we have folks here for that. Is that right? Do we need to open this? Do we need a motion to open this, or do we just?
You do not need a motion to open it, no.
Okay, so do we want to hear from, so this is a petition that, so there are two there are two pieces of an easement that was created in this neighborhood that the petitioners are suggesting get absorbed into an existing lot, because the easement is not needed for the driveway, and I think it just makes the lot weird. Am I summarizing this correctly?
Yeah, so there's yes, thank you for using the official terms. There's currently one property is using a driveway easement to access it, their property. That easement is being moved. Actually, I'll bring up the it's visible. Hopefully it is. We have this circular driveway, and here we have the driveway is ending here, and there's essentially what is a land swap, a very minimal amount of land from one owner to the other, to have to stop the access in between with the driveway. Everything that is being proposed conforms with what is necessary, and the engineering department as well as the planning department have approved that this meets all dimensional requirements and all access requirements in order to be approved.
Okay.
So, the large circle is going away, and the dotted line is what's going to be replacing it.
That's correct.
And there are two parcels listed. There's A and B, and I can't tell the delineation of B. Is B also being added to a property, or is that not?
You can,
I see
So
is the diamond shape, right? Is that right?
yeah, so if we go over here, so the notes,
Right. Parcels A and B to be combined with lot 21 and form one contiguous lot. So parcel B, I just had trouble finding the boundary of.
so I believe that this is parcel B right here.
well, it's
Is
the
it, well, this is
triangle.
lot 21.
Yeah, let's have there's a petitioner here. Should
Michael, you can go ahead. Well, it says you can unmute. I know that you're on a phone. I don't know. I actually don't know how you unmute on a phone.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody.
Go ahead.
Mike Moriali from 17 and 15 Brooks.
Great.
So basically what we're trying to do is get rid of the easement going in front of 11. So that's the loop coming up and going up the right.
Yep.
And so we're going to move the lot line up at the top so that we can put in a separate loop that's fully on our property. And then the new easement will go from the street straight up that dotted line. And then parcel B is a piece of 15 Brooks, which I own as well. So it kind of just cleans up the lot line. So then we want to have an easement over 15.
Okay.
So the easement from the street will go directly to 17. So that triangle right there is parcel B.
I see. And there's no, like, lot 10 is fine with this. There's no impact on neighbors. Are there any neighbors or any abutters here that have any concerns about any of this?
No, we haven't had any issues.
Okay.
And there's only two houses up on the hill. 11 and 17. 15 remains a buildable lot, but we don't really have any intention to build right now.
Okay. Anything else we need to be thinking about here? So the decision that we need to make as a board is just whether or not we endorse this plan as an ANR. So if we don't see any concerns with what's being done, right, we just get a motion to endorse the ANR as not requiring approval under the subdivision control law. Is that right, Taylor?
That's correct.
Okay, does anyone on the board have questions or concerns or discussion, or Brian?
Just a question, not a concern. Forgive my being new. Do we need to do something, or would this happen if we did nothing? Like if we all just chose to do nothing, this would move forward as is.
That's correct.
Okay, is there an advantage to us doing something?
No.
It might move faster.
Yeah, it might move faster. Yeah.
And if you vote for it, you get to put your name on the Mylar.
The reason I ask
I
is,
think considering it I think are you wondering if there's something that we're not thinking of that we don't want our names on, or are you just thinking?
I guess what I was thinking is that, and respectfully, we're just taking the advice of engineering that these lots are all still conforming, and that's what we would normally do. I trust that that is the case, but if we're just relying on their information and just being a pass-through conduit, I'm just curious if we're better served by just doing nothing. I would tend to support this because I seems like it's the right thing. But if it's easier for us to do nothing, I also support that as well.
Yeah,
if that's was
John, you had a comment?
No, it's, engineering has evaluated it. They're really the experts in this, that it meets all the requirements. We should approve it. It's not, we're not here to do we're not here to do engineering's job here. That we hire the professional engineers. I've looked at a lot of plans. They didn't make a drawing that was, real easy to understand. You got to spend more time with it than maybe you should, but
Right.
I think as Diab said, they're going to get it. We just would be making it difficult for fellow resident.
I mean,
I think
the only question that I have looking at it is why parcel B is not being added to lot 10. And without hearing from lot 10, that's the only thing that I think we'd be weighing on. And
The same owner.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, I own lot 10 as well.
so I think as long as we're just shuffling parcels of land to close out an old easement that was holding space for something that didn't end up being needed, I think all of the lots will still be buildable, they'll still be conforming, and there's no concern about access to the property, so I don't see the benefit to leaving it uncommented on.
Yeah, I mean, you're making it a little nicer lot to build on, but
Yeah, this one, see, Brian, I'm with you on being conservative about what we sign off on when there are murky issues, but this one seems fairly clear cut.
no, I tend to agree. I just wanted to know if us signing onto it or us doing absolutely nothing had the exact same result. Than putting my name on a piece of paper. I generally rather not if I don't have to. But I have no opposition to this. It's not like I'm opposed to this in any way.
I mean, you can always abstain from a vote too.
so. I think there's a good question as to whether the board even needs to consider these if they are compliant. And, does the board actually have to spend time looking at these? So the key thing is our subdivision doesn't actually have anything about lot shapes or anything else. All they have to do is meet and bounds and, frontage and all those other measurement details, which we typically, I mean, in the past, we've commented, and said, when we've disagreed with perhaps the effect on the neighborhood or something like that, but technically that's not part of our decision. Our decision is just based on what we have in the subdivision regs, which essentially says as long as it's a buildable lot, it has to go through. So if the board, maybe there's some way of if Taylor could find out if we actually have to look at these things. It would take one.
You do.
Take us.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
I'm comfortable moving forward.
I move that we endorse the A&R for, shoot, what is the address?
Not requiring approval under the subdivision control law.
Right, and it's for
11 and 17 Brook Street.
11 and 17. So my motion is that we endorse the A&R for 11 and 17 Brook Street.
Thank you. Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, and the roll call vote, Diab,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Brian.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so the motion passes.
Great.
Thanks all.
Great, thank you. to the petitioner, you can reach out to me later this week, and I'll help walk you through the next steps.
We all get to sign the Mylar.
Yep.
Okay, so we do need to go through our positions for the Springtown meeting articles.
Now, when you say position, do you mean are we still going at the beginning of the meeting the way we normally do?
The planning board overview will be part of, I think you're asking the order of the meeting and the discussion let's maybe move that down to the general discussion. The thing that we
Okay.
need to do under the positions for Springtown meeting is vote and express our position on any of the warrant articles. So the
Oh, I
warrant
see.
that we're not presenting to the town, but may be asked to make a recommendation on.
Oh, I see.
We want to have discussed that as a board before we just throw someone up there to say something. And Brian, what do we need to vote on everything in here, or do we need to just choose the ones that, I mean, obviously we want to put a vote in the other besides us, because the entire town meeting will be about 3A. But once that's over, the CPA, the two articles that are related to the Community Preservation Act will be something that I think everyone will need to weigh in on. So we will want to make a vote about whether or not we recommend favorable action on that.
I think there's actually a third one.
There are three.
There's a third one.
There are
Capital planning has an article on the CPA.
And capital planning. Is there anything else? So that will be, let's see, that'll be articles 9, 10, and what's the third one?
37 motion 2, which is the capital planning regarding the CPA.
Okay, and as a not town meeting member, I have the Luddite form of this.
You don't have the 80-page document.
No, but I don't think anyone has the 80-page document yet.
But
I should look in my mailbox. Maybe I have it outside.
It came this week, yeah.
Okay.
okay, so Article 37. Say again, Article 37, section.
Motion 2.
Motion 2.
It should be on the town's website by now. Let me go check.
I think it's just that I am.
It is. If you actually Google Winchester, Mass Springtown meeting, and click on Springtown meeting motion book, you get it.
Okay, so are those the only, so those are the, is there discussion about the Community Preservation Act? Does anyone have concerns or questions about this? We have had 2 seats for the process of pulling together the language for this and getting it to town meeting. Taylor and I have as part of the historic group. Has anyone else been on there for anything else? Brian's been following it very closely. So I guess Nick and John Diab, I think you're pretty on top. Anyone have questions or discussion about this?
So I think that so there are 2 parts to this. One is to move this to the voters, and the other is to set up, create a bylaw or to create the committee which will oversee the funds. And I don't have a problem with either of those personally.
And I think
then there's the capital planning one at the end, which I can discuss why it's there and what's come up about it.
okay, and briefly, I want to say that one of the CPA meetings, they made the point that the sort of nuances, if anyone has concerns about the structure of the board that will sort of manage the CPA, I think that we would vote to establish the board, and then the composition will be nuanced over time. So I think they're a little concerned about.
I don't think you can do that. I think you have to set the article actually sets the composition in stone. So contention around this is that the article which creates the committee was actually not part of the original set of articles submitted for the warrant. The warrant was actually closed, and then the select board opened it up, and they put this article in. So it came in very late in the process with a number of stakeholders who felt they were not involved. One of those stakeholders was capital planning. And so one of the concerns is that there's not a lot of, hasn't been a lot of discussion as to whether this particular form of the committee is actually the one that will best suit what the town needs. Capital planning, I can talk about the capital planning motion later, or I can talk about it now, but that's the, yeah.
I think, go ahead, liaison right into it, go for it.
Okay, so capital planning voted to support both of these articles, but they also voted to, the article from capital planning is to, because the article from capital planning was to create a committee of town meeting, which would actually come together and review what the structure of this committee for community preservation would be, and how it would set up its guidelines for how it would allocate monies. And that's primarily the reason for, we need to have, if we don't have both of these go through town meeting now, it essentially creates a delay in the process, so that if the town votes to incorporate the CPA, then we'd have to, it staggers when we can start getting the money. So having both the CPA and the bylaw and this committee together at the start is important. So which is why capital planning supports both this article and the previous one, but it just felt that there was a rush to get this committee created without significant input, and that they are voting to create a committee of town meeting again, which would review how this was set up and the guidelines for distribution of funds. So
Go ahead, Brian.
Diab, are you done?
Yes.
So everything you just said, I agree with. Article 9 sets up the, accepts the CPA, sends it to the voters in November. Article 10 sets up the bylaw, and by state statute, a member of the planning board is on the CPA committee. And so at least my perspective as a member of the planning board, that's what I want to see. Once that's there, me as a member of the planning board, I'm less concerned about who the other members are. That's certainly a town meeting issue, but as far as the planning board is concerned, we have our voice there. So that is good. As far as the Article 37.2, which sets up the town meeting committee to look at the process, I'm uncomfortable with that because there is no member of the planning board on that article. So it essentially would be, if we passed 9, 10, and 37.2, we'd say everything's all set up. Now let's let a committee that doesn't necessarily have the members listed here decide how everything's going to work. So I'm in favor of 9 because I want the CPA. I'm in favor of 10 because I believe that the planning board is adequately represented. I'm against 37.2 because I believe the planning board is not adequately represented there. So.
I need to open that article.
Very succinct. Thank you, Ryan.
Dia, what's your thoughts on the capital planning? You've been in those meetings more, not having someone on there.
So I think the key is this is a town.
37.
It's a committee of town meetings. So I don't recall what the composition is.
I'm trying to get to it.
I think it is Town manager, FinCom, select member capital planning. Yeah. So I guess, Brian, you raise a good point. Those people who are statutorily required to be on the CPA committee perhaps should be on this committee as well. Maybe that's a motion. If that could be floated as a motion at town meeting to include that. I think Capital has felt that has not been a plan which is provided, which would show how we would handle the capital planning committee's role in terms of monitoring and dispersing from, or recommending disbursement from the capital funds and the CPA. And so there's a concern that you're not going to have a holistic view of the town's needs, because you're going to have two different committees who might not have all of the information. And so it's not that you would go committee shopping to get your project through, but that there isn't enough transparency and sharing of knowledge. So I think that's where Capital is coming from.
I agree with Brian's comments. I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think a significant number of projects that would be fundable by the CPA would be of high interest to the planning board. So we risk confusion and misrepresentation if we don't have a seat. I wonder if they're planning for planning board to regularly be an at-large member, but that's a bit risky.
So if I could move that we support the first two articles.
Thank you.
I would second that.
Great. And so roll call vote on the motion to approve, to recommend favorable action. So Diab.
Aye.
Nick.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And Brian.
Aye.
Okay, and then, great, so that passes, those two are, we unanimously, I'm an aye as well, did I say that? Recommend favorable action for motions 9 and 10, and how do we want to handle 37-2? Is there a motion around that, or is there?
I would move recommending unfavorable action on Article 37, motion 2.
Okay, is
Could
there
you
a second?
state a reason for that, please?
Yes, I believe that absent the planning board being present on that committee, we are not represented in what will ultimately be a committee that statutorily requires our presence. That would be the Article 10 committee. So this would be setting up procedures where we would be absent from the establishment of those procedures.
Okay, is there a second for that motion and that rationale comment?
I guess I could second that.
Okay, in a roll call vote, Brian?
Can we have discussion first, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion. I keep forgetting to invite discussion. Thank you all for bearing with me in this first attempt. Discussion, that motion.
So I find myself torn because I did not, when I voted for this as the planning board's representative to capital planning, but I did not recognize that there was a lack of planning board presence on this committee. So I would like to vote both yes and no.
You could abstain.
I can't abstain. I just want to let it be known that I appreciate Brian's pointing that out, but I still feel that I think that this does require more thought than I think was possible in the short time that it was put forward.
I mean, can we just express no opinion on it, or are we in danger of?
I think we have an opinion on it, and I think
Yeah. We've got a motion, so
Okay.
okay. Okay. Any other discussion on the topic? Okay, roll call vote. Brian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Diab.
I will abstain.
Okay, and I am an aye on that, so we are 4 affirmatives and 1 abstention. The motion passes and we will make the recommendation if we're asked. Nothing else in the motion book that we need to address.
Great.
Hold on, right. Okay, so we can move on to 3A general discussion. So I think someone correct me if I'm wrong, but if I think I'm understanding correctly from Heather's advice through Brian, that we need to vote on who and what we present to town meeting.
So my understanding from Heather, who I spoke with earlier, was that we need to either vote a presentation or vote to authorize 1 or 2 members to work with Taylor to present town meeting. But either way, it has to be a voted decision of our committee to move that forward. So if we had the presentation all done right now, we could vote that and that would be easy. But I think there's still probably more editing to be done. So I think we need a motion for someone to ultimately to make that type of change. But that's
So-
what she told me tonight.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we do a planning board update and then we do a 3A article presentation.
Right.
Right at the same
And
at
we
the
need
same time, right? Or one right after the other.
one after the other, I think.
Right.
So as far as sort of, so back to Nick's question about when this all happens, this should all happen Monday night because we're kind of top of the order here. I'm guessing the plan for the scheduling is that we get through 3A and adjourn, but we'll see how far out 3A spins. So we would be, Article 1 is reports from everyone. And then we are 3A is Article 4.
So I think we just need to vote on the report. And I know
Okay.
you've been working on one. Is there, could you give us a brief overview on?
Yeah. Sure. I will buzz through it. It's not done. But I've had some feedback from Diab, good help from Diab and feedback from Taylor. Okay. Let me just make sure I'm opening. I have like 14 of them. Hold on. Where I've drawn heavily on I Ching's past graphics and Diab's presentation and a little extra. Let me. Nope, that's not it. Yep. Okay, let me share my screen. Can I share my screen? What needs to happen here? Let's see. Taylor, how do I get permission to share my screen?
You should have permission. You're
Okay, I've
your
got it.
host.
Okay.
So
PowerPoint. This one. Okay. All right, so I'm not gonna do the presentation. I'm just gonna buzz through what I have for slides here. So there's our introduction, overview of who we've got here. This is our chance.
Oh,
to highlight-
oh yeah. My name needs a second S in the middle.
You need a second S in the middle. Thank you for that. And I have
Great.
not proofread yet, so keep calling these out because it'll save me time later. Diab, are you correct here? Spelling wise? Brian, I've got all the
Yeah.
letters. Everybody else good? I am putting Griffin here so we can, well, besides the enormous amount of help he's given us, but I'm gonna try to layer in our platform for assistant town planner. And then we have a thank you slide to all the people. I won't probably read this whole thing, but we've got all the names up there that we need to cover. And I'll pack in who I can. I have one brief slide that goes over sort of what we do, that I think would be helpful for new town meeting members. So just briefly, permits, zoning bylaw, and master plan, sort of following and managing. And then we have an update on multi-unit housing through town. This is straight from I Ching's fall present, or Dieb's fall presentation. I don't know who put the slide together. So it updates where we are for each of our multi-unit housing projects that I think everyone will be curious about. We do one single slide on Waterfield, which is, you know, such a long labor. So we'll highlight that project, the number of units that are deed restricted affordable housing, the question about parking that we've gotten lots of, and then it's an admirable project for sustainability goals. So we'll highlight some of those pieces and we'll let people know that it's currently in the permitting process. This needs to be fixed a bit, but it will touch on where we are with our housing production plan. I'm extremely unclear on who else presents on this. So I don't know if that should be, I don't think we should go into more detail on this, but I could add a little more if no one else is going to touch on it, but my impression is the town manager does it. So it's essentially just mentioning that the housing production plan is currently expired and being redone. And it clarifies for people that the fact that we are less than half of where we need to be for safe harbor and for subsidized housing inventory gives us less control over 40Bs coming into town. So it highlights the importance of forwarding our goals for affordable housing and make sure that we keep that in mind as we move into our rezoning. We position ourselves in the master plan, focusing on the North Main Street corridor, which is one of the earliest goals that kept coming up for the master plan process. So we highlight a couple of the, those are phrases taken straight from the master plan. We specifically asked for zoning amendments and design guidelines, and that's exactly what we've been working on since fall anyway, and what we'll be working on until next fall. So we kind of position ourselves there. And then I'm mentioning MBTA 3A as an extension of kind of as an opportunity that we took to move that zoning goal forward and the multifamily housing goals forward. And I'm mostly trying to diffuse a couple of small issues here by pointing out, I'll have a little more time to answer some of the underlying district questions that we heard tonight and that we keep hearing, and kind of preempt some of the questions that people will have about whether we're doing enough to guide design, which is something that we're going to unfold over the summer. So I'll point out some things that help encourage developers to use the underlying zoning, things that we're going to be working on, making sure that we keep that underlying zoning attractive. And what would happen, I think we should put in a slide about a sample parcel, what would have happened or what would happen if it went either way. And then North Main Street, an update on the work that we've been doing, the consultant that's helping us, the fact that that developers can choose the underlying zoning and that we're working on making it attractive, incentives that we can use to sort of make that happen in the way that we're using sub-districts to allow sensitivity to the neighborhood needs and to the character that we want to have appropriate for each section of North Main. And then we have a section on, you know, what we're looking to do, which is replace that missing middle. I don't know if there'll be enough time to articulate that fully in the 3A articles. So we want to point out that we're trying to make sure people can be flexible and still stay in town, whether the nuclear family structure changes or people want to age in place, or our incredibly successful grads are dying to live near us, but not with us, and come home immediately after college. And so sort of what our goals are for multifamily there, and then highlighting that we want to keep that first floor commercial. that's the character that we want for the town, because that seems like we're hearing over and over that that's one thing people are concerned about. And then we will point out what we're going to be working on once we get through North Main, which will be the Holton, Swanton Cross area, the light industrial area, and the economic development strategic plan. I'm going to highlight ways people can engage with us. So by joining the ZRAC, I'll highlight a little bit of the role that they played with 3A and the role that we need them to play for the light industrial work, how to reach us, to follow the town planner letter, when our meetings are, and then how to reach us in a larger email format so people don't text me quite as often. Feedback, things we're missing.
I think I like it. I think it looks great. I would vote for it. I would vote to approve it.
I appreciate that. But what criticisms do we have? What am I missing? What balls did I drop here?
You know, I think it looks very good. You know that I think we all know that people are going to be concerned about what things are going to look like. You know, what these buildings might look like. And I know there was a slide there. It was the last item. It was discussed input, at least, on
yes,
on design. And you know, that's I think on every one of these slides, that's what they're thinking about. What's it going to look like?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't want to sort of say it's going to be, you know, Stepford Wild on repeat up and down the thing, but I think we could get people more engaged in that process. And
Jerry, would it be worth putting in one of those later illustrations from Michael and Wang and John Rufo, where they had these sort of visions for what the townhouses might look like?
I did look over those, and that might be good. They had, so that there's one where they have 4 different pictures. 2 I think are in Providence. One's a larger development, and I thought about putting that in, but I was trying to crop it out so that we wouldn't have the really, I don't think we would ever have a really huge.
Oh, no,
blocks.
yeah, I'm thinking about, they actually did some renderings just for us. It was late in the process. This is something that Michael presented late last year when he was in Montana. And they actually looked at one of the lots up on North Main Street. And they had a like a rendering of a series of townhouses. So they was sort of like, so if we could get that from Michael's presentation.
Okay, that's great. That would be perfect. Okay. Yeah, that's good, because people will either sort of exhale and say that's beautiful, or they'll put in an application for the ZRAC. Either way, we're happy to get the feedback. So that's good. Okay, anything else? I don't have anything in here about assistant town planner, and we should probably sort out whether, when, and anything else. I don't want to sort of lead the witness here. Anything else people are? Go ahead, Brian.
As a former non-member of the planning board, I will just state that members of town meeting tend to zone out when the presentation goes beyond 10 minutes.
Yes, I'm bringing
so
my
I think,
dictator, and I'm gonna have her give me a 2 at 8, a 1 at 9, and a fist at 10.
okay, perfect. And while all the information is important, I think that people just start not paying as close attention after it gets beyond 10 minutes. So I think the presentation looks good. I suspect you're going to have to cut, not add, because a minute a slide gets you to 10 minutes. And if we have to ask for more time, I just think it's a better optic to stick to 10 minutes, especially since we're about to speak again for another 10 minutes shortly after.
Okay, as long as we don't feel like anything's missing, I can trim it up, and I'll do a practice run.
Yeah, I think less is more, and I think that people will be more focused if it's a shorter presentation on what we have, and I wouldn't be afraid to make cuts.
You know, I wondered, I'm certainly new to this, but talking about, it's interesting, talking about the Holton Street area. But that's a whole nother issue, and I wonder if we need to put that in this presentation now,
Well, that's just that will be, as far as taking time back, that's gonna be short. I'm gonna basically say we're gonna take a right and look at Holton, Swanton and Cross. It's coming.
Mhm.
It's, we've just been mentioning it and I just want to give them the update that we're not there. And it will probably be a year before we have much of a presentation.
Okay.
So it's just to let people know we haven't forgotten. We're just trying to do a good, thoughtful process for what we have on our plate. It's
Okay.
not, I am making no suggestions about
Yeah,
the direction we go, and it's a passionate area. We've got a lot of hands on that one.
Just let them know, you're just letting them know you haven't forgotten.
Exactly. And like a
Yeah.
stay tuned,
I think the other key thing is that we did ask town meeting last spring for extra monies to pursue that. And we did not have the personnel resources to actually pursue it. So we are turning that money back to the town. But I think since we had a special warrant article last spring to get the money, I think we should let town meeting know that
Yes,
we
tried.
haven't spent the money and we're still planning on going forward.
Great. Okay, good. So,
You want
I
a
move.
motion? Go ahead, yeah.
I move that the planning board, oh shoot, Brian, you had the perfect language there. It was the one where we approve, we give permission for
Authorize the
authorize
chair
the
to work.
chair. Yes, say it. You got it.
I move that the planning board authorize the chair to work with Taylor and up to one other planning board member of her choosing to finalize the presentation for town meeting.
I second that. Oh,
okay, and a roll call vote, Dieb,
Aye.
Nick,
aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and John.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So great, thank you. And then, I think we need a motion, a second, and discussion on the 3A presentation. Is that the correct order? I'm trying.
We actually don't need to move on that one.
So that one just, so hold on, we don't need to move on who presents on 3A.
Nope.
Okay.
The reason for the requirement for the report from the town, from the committee, was because a couple of town meetings ago, one of the committees presented a report which was not agreed upon by 2/3 by us. It was a 3-2 essentially vote on what was going into the report, and that was not brought up at town meeting, that two of the members were not happy with the report. So
Oh, okay.
yes, this was yeah. So
Okay.
it's our motion. We can for the article for MBTA 3A, we can do whatever we want.
Woo!
So
Great.
I totally agree with everything you said, except that in my conversations with the moderator, we were told that we needed to vote any and all reports or presentations to town meeting.
So
yeah, but this is an article.
I mean,
should we just vote, or
I guess
that's
okay.
Or
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Before we vote, I want to sort of put this to bed before town meeting. Is there any appetite to removing the word only? We've heard a lot of discussion. We've all seen a lot of emails. I want to make sure we put this to bed and either say, no, we don't want to do this, or yes, we do want to do this tonight, which is our last meeting, aside from the meeting right before town meeting. And I just feel like something that we've heard so much about, I don't want to just ignore. So I will say that I would very much like to remove the word only, and that would be my strong suggestion. But I also recognize that there's political realities of moving this forward, and I don't want to screw anything up. And I'm a new member, so the last thing I want to do is screw up a lot of work. So we need to put this to bed one way or the other.
So if I could make a recommendation, which would be, rather than removing the word only, to replace it with the language that we saw pass in Arlington and Lexington, which is, oh shoot.
Included but not limited to, or something like that.
Including but not limited to. I think that provides us, so we know that language. My only concern is that if you remove the word only, the state will consider it to be really broad.
Too open.
And I'm not a lawyer, but I did talk to a lawyer who suggested that this would provide us some wiggle room. And this lawyer was not doing this as a lawyer, so I shouldn't even say that. But I did talk to a lawyer. Anyway, the point was that we have G, which gives us development or architecture, and including but not limited to allows us to broaden the list. Apparently, we can't broaden it everywhere, but because it has to look like something, it has to be somehow related to what's on the list. We can't like say you can only put purple grass on there or something like that, but using that, just replacing the language, I think would work.
I think
We
one
would
of
have to bring,
happen. We will make the motion or an audience member will make the motion. So I think that's sort of the decision. I mean, it's come up to us often enough.
I would recommend that we make the motion to amend.
I concur.
And just so you know, just so that we're all aware, we just need to be abundantly aware that if we are going to make the motion to amend, we're doing that against the advice of town council, against the advice of our consultants, and against the advice of the town manager. So if we're going to make that decision, we need to be very clear that we're doing that against their advice. And if asked, they will have to state their opinion that they do not support the amendment.
So
just need to make sure that that's very clear.
Could you provide us the objections from those three parties?
Yes, so the town council does not believe or believes that that only is there for a reason in order to comply. Replacing it with any other language would remove us from compliance. They do recognize that based off of the what is happening in this article in other communities, they cannot determine whether the removal of it or replacing of it will cause us to be denied by the state, but they do believe that it's their opinion that it would remove us from compliance. The town manager falls in line with town council's opinion, and our consultant separately before gave a similar rationale.
So the fact that Arlington and Lexington have had their language approved by the state does not convince town council that ours would be approved with the same language?
Town council, it is the opinion of town council that they were approved because that language was under site plan review, not under site plan review authority. The process of site plan, not under the process of the authority that is doing the site plan review. Gary, I'm saying that correct, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes. Yes, but I don't have great clarity on that objection. But yes.
So they're saying that if we were to move the language to a different section, it would be compliant, if I understand that argument.
Yes. I mean, we didn't get into the details much more than that, but yeah, because it's not under the site plan section and it's under the site plan review authority section. That's the non-compliance part.
But we don't have, do we have a separate site plan review section? I thought it all came into one section. Because we delineated that whole list, that laundry basket was all in one section.
That is why I do not, I am murky on that.
Yeah. I don't really understand the subtle difference here. I mean, we don't have that. We don't. So what if if we replace the only, the state says we're not in compliance, and they make us put it back?
They would probably strike that section. And we would have to, so we would no longer have site plan review authority. So, I mean, what they would do is they would say, okay, everything else can go through because it's a separability clause, but you no longer have site plan review authority because that whole section is non-compliant. So
and then we can try again in the fall.
We can try again in the fall. But that means that for the next 6 months, if someone wanted to come through and start building something, they would not have to go through site plan review.
Or they could strike
Sure, I mean,
included but not limited to. They could may address, they might strike included but not limited to, which would then just say may address. I mean, it's hard to know what they could do, what they would do. They could do a lot of things.
I struggle to understand, except for the risk of opening the motion to amendments on the floor of town meeting, which I understand completely. I struggle to understand the concern about replacing only with including but not limited to because it's been approved. So I think we have to decide, going against the advice of, you know, moderator, council manager, town manager. I don't love that. I don't think that being in conflict with them helps us, but we have to decide. We may, so what's like, we'll be questioned about it. You know, there's a great chance that in the discussion, people will ask why we didn't include that. And I think the motion will come from the floor, and we don't want to reflect this discussion sort of inauthentically, and we don't want to get into an argument in the floor of town meeting.
I mean, we have section G, so I mean maybe that's or you know where we have design
but there
standards.
is, you know, this could be a law that's on the books in perpetuity, and the state could be really rigid about changing it. So I understand the interest in not knowing what we don't know. Like I don't love the only, but you know, I definitely.
But we, you know, there's there's a compromise position, which is for us to say that legal has said that, you know, we don't know, you know, legal advice from the people who were paid to tell us how to do things legally is not to do this, but there may be a way to do this at we can take a second bite at the apple to fix this, but we need to be in compliance now. This is a complex issue. We didn't actually think about changing the language until we learned that other communities had language which would give more flexibility. Legal says that it matters where we put it in our document. So we can pass it now and make a commitment to town meeting that we will explore ways of opening up this language as much as possible and present it to them in the fall. Because we can change it whenever we want, as long as, but you know, by then, legal can come up with a way for us to broaden the language as required in the right place. I mean,
So,
because I think what's going to happen is if somebody comes up from the floor and suggests this, legal's going to stand up and say, this is not the right way to do it. And we're going to get, town meeting will just, yeah, okay.
I mean, it would have been to get the legal opinion that no, you can't do it is good, but to also get some advice and show us how to do it, you know, would be helpful.
That's what I'm not clear on, is if there, like, what did we do wrong that we got into this sort of situation? Like, I don't, like, if Arlington and Lexington, I cannot clarify why ours is so much riskier than Arlington and Lexington's. I don't understand how we positioned our site plan review authority differently than they did. I'm sure it's there, I just can't see it.
I think the
Yeah,
problem we
I don't.
have is that, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with Carrie. I don't see it clearly myself either.
But I was going to say, I don't know that we have time to figure this out before next Monday.
Right, right. And, you know, we, but so what do we need to resolve? We need to resolve whether or not we are bringing a motion against all advice to the floor of, on the floor, or whether we are. Go ahead, Brian.
my understanding from the moderator, again, with my conversation with her earlier, was that if we make a motion such as this, it would just go directly, so she told me it would just go directly to her, and it would be part of our motion. It would not be a motion to amend, it would just be directly the motion. So it would not be us standing up and saying we're making a change. It would be a paper at the table, and it would be a change in the wording. That's my understanding.
So
But,
she's,
you know,
so she has decreed that this change does not substantially alter. I mean, usually the guideline is that you can make a change as long as it does not substantially alter the motion, the original article.
my specific question was the removal of the word only.
Oh, okay.
And the specific answer was, it would not be a motion from the floor. It would be a changed article that would be read directly as our article. To that end, just to get us to a resolution, I would move that we strike the word only from our motion.
I guess I could second that.
That's okay. There's a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion so we are abandoning including but not limited to, if we do that.
Oh,
We would be, unless somebody, I was simply making the least significant change that I have confirmation we would not need to get a new, have a motion from the floor. I mean, I have been told that would just be a new article that would, not new, it would be just the motion that she would read directly as our article.
I wonder if that would
Oh.
be, we can't find out in this before we need to close this meeting, so we can't find out before we vote on this motion, but I don't know if that would be true for including but not limited to.
We could, you know, have another meeting this week. We have.
Sure.
Friday would be the earliest, I guess, or we could change it on Monday. I am very uncomfortable with simply removing the word, because I think that the state will see this as being far too broad. I'm much more comfortable.
Yeah,
I'm more comfortable.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm more comfortable with replacing the wording, but both of those, after Taylor saying that town council is suggesting that this is a bad idea, I'm now uncomfortable with making any changes. Anyway,
There is a motion to strike the word only. That we either need to withdraw or vote on.
Could we meet?
I mean, we
Get a
could,
little more,
do
get a little more information, have a quick.
special meetings pretty regularly. What would people be able to do a meeting Friday, preferably morning, because town hall closes at noon? I mean, it could be over coffee in the morning, but is there a time period on Friday that works for everyone or majority?
Fridays, anytime Friday would be, I can make it work.
You're a good Friday. Nick sounds like maybe
Yeah.
not.
Let me just take a quick look. No, Friday should be okay.
I would prefer first thing Friday morning.
What would
I
that?
have a flight on Friday at 3 o'clock that would have to be sometime early.
It would be morning.
I could do maybe 9.
Dia?
Yep,
When you
9
said
o'clock works for me.
first thing, 9 is good?
Sure, I'm good with 9.
Okay, so 9 Friday to hear feedback on whether we could amend the language to including but not limited to, and feedback from the moderator, the town manager, council, and whoever else we can hear from in time.
Yep.
I will withdraw my motion to amend.
Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Okie dokie. 9 a.m. Friday. We were going to touch on outreach before town meeting. Do we feel like, I think we had good attendance.
I've got an early morning. I think I've got to. I think I've got to sign off for tonight.
Okay.
I apologize.
We're winding down, but thank you for being here, Nick, and we'll see you Friday. What else, Taylor? The outreach, any you had a good turnout, any other things we need to touch on for outreach?
No, I'm gonna send an email out to ZREC members tomorrow morning.
Right.
Based off of what we heard today, just some final questions, some final stuff that they can use to reach out to their friends, family, town meeting districts, whatever. And that will be kind of our last push to next week. It will be mostly from ZREC members.
Great. Awesome. And then we skip North Main, and then the fiscal year 25 budget. Anything we need to touch on tonight? FinCom strategy, assistant planner strategy.
So do we know, last I heard was FinCom had reopened the planning board's budget.
We are reopened and we are being discussed on Thursday. And from our liaison, I am going to try to chat with him tomorrow. They are getting clarity about the $45,000 that was line item that was carried over, and the $53,400 expense that was shown. So they're trying to resolve the differences in versions of the budget so that they can.
Do they finally understand that we're asking for a full-time planner?
We're getting there. Slow going.
I'm just.
We're definitely getting there.
I'm still disappointed that at this late stage, they never reached out to us prior to their original. We had a liaison who never reached out to us to talk.
We're now talking.
Yes.
And we're just trying to get the numbers clarified so that he knows what the ask is, and we're gonna try our best to get it through FinCom, and if not, we need to decide what to do. I'm gonna try to talk to Michelle Pryor, Chair of the Select Board, to see if there's a way we can get a recommendation from the Select Board for funding for the Assistant Town Planner if we don't get it from FinCom in time.
So, I mean, the select board approved the town manager's budget, which included the
Right.
town planner.
Right, so I think that's the error that they're trying to resolve, is he misread something on that.
And I would recommend to this board that if FinCom's budget does not include the monies for a town planner, that we make amendment on the floor to the planning board budget to include that. And I think we have some strong arguments. One is, I think that we've seen the benefits that having Griffin working with us for the last 4 months has had. Without Griffin there, I don't think we would have gotten our maps done at the very least for 3A. The fact that we've gotten to this point is only because I think of the enormous amount of personal time that members of this board have put in, which is way above what's anticipated of a volunteer board, that we are spending money on consultants every year, which for things that could be done by a person in-house, and we would save the town money on that. And we are woefully short-staffed in terms of any of our outreach plans or anything like that. I think so what I'm suggesting is that if we decide to make a motion, that we come up with a short presentation indicating all of the benefits that having an assistant town planner would have. And one of the things I think would be very useful is for Taylor to think about all of the things he's been called on to do in town hall, which are related to his position, but are not his primary. You know, he's been pulled in many ways, just as Brian was, and that's good for the town, but not for the planning board.
I agree with that. So to cover our bases, why don't I entertain a motion to authorize Taylor's presentation to town meeting on the warrant article for 3A, and then why don't we vote on somebody presenting to town meeting on the budget, just so that all of our presentations were voted on per recommendation of the moderator. And then we'll get to work on putting the presentation together and keep hoping FinCom comes around. Or someone's able to help out.
So I would move, Brian, you've got the better language, go please.
I move that we authorize Taylor to present on MBT3A article
I think we're
4.
Article 4.
I think that's it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. John,
Yes.
Dieb,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Taylor, you are so authorized unanimously with Nick absent. And then who normally presents to budget issues? Chair, town planner, or other?
Chair.
Okay.
I mean, usually we don't present at all.
All right, well, let's authorize me to be ready to present. Possibly with an alternate if it's at a certain, it should be fine. It should be fine.
And I've been working on going back through the budgets for the last 5 years for all of the arguments used for why we shouldn't get an assistant town planner, which have been rotating and varied, along with the opinions of various organizations, whether we should or shouldn't. So I have a table that I can help get to you with lots of information.
I will gratefully accept that help. Why don't we plan, well, I'll text you or email you. Sounds like you're gonna be out of town, but I'll try to grab you when I can. I would take a motion to authorize me to present on budget if needed at town meeting.
What, can we amend that to say that it would authorize you to present an amendment to the budget to add funds for an assistant town planner?
Great, I will take that motion.
Second,
Great, and roll call vote, Brian,
yeah.
Deb,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay, anything else? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, John,
Yes.
Brian,
yeah.
Deb,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you to Nancy Polcari, our recording secretary. Thank you to WinCam for bringing us live to the people. Thanks to everyone who hung in there. Good night, Richard Leaf. Good night, everyone else. And I'll see you guys Friday and at town meeting.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Bye. Thank you.